right, so I'm back here for day 3. This is actually the 3rd round of layers. I never got back to it the last session that I was painting, and so now I'm going to add a 3rd layer. Each time I'm layering more intense colors, more texture, more detail. And so I think I'll start out today by adding a little bit more to the background. So I'm going to take a large brush, and one thing I like to do in my paintings is kind of darken the corners so that it brings the viewer's attention towards the middle of the painting. So I'm just going to take some raw umber, lighten it slightly, and see what that gets me. That's a pretty good value there. Now it's kind of a dull, cool color in the background, and so what I might do is just try to warm it up a little bit, and one way I can do that is by adding cad red light into the raw umber. And I may not like this, but I'm going to try it out. So I'm going to take some of these warmer color tones from the pear and try to work them into the background slightly. Not very much at all. I'm going to rinse, dab, and soften. Never be afraid in your paintings to completely take something away and redo it. So I'm not so sure that I will like this. It's a little strong, so I think what I'll do is go back to my raw umber and white mixture and start toning it down a little bit. I don't want to get the background too dark because then I'll take this away. So what's happening is I've made a decision that it's not working out so well. So it's worth it at this point in the painting to kind of go back and readjust. And so what I'm going to do is lift off some of this paint and tone it down, take it back to more of the cool colors. And so hopefully what I want you to understand is the thought process of the painting, and that you really don't have to get it all in one sitting. You can make adjustments. I'm kind of liking how this is fading and blending just as I'm wiping it away here. So it's leaving a little bit of the warm tones in the background here. I'm liking that. And because I let the previous layers dry, then I'm able to do this. I'm able to come back in and make these wide sweeping adjustments without, messing up what I've got so far. So going back to just the raw umber and white, a little bit of medium. I'm going to darken the bottom here. So hopefully it'll kind of have the effect of maybe a spotlight shining down on the subject matter, these pears. So I'm rinsing the paint out, wiping, softening, letting some of these brush strokes show. I think I'll take my large soft brush. I'm going to loosen up these bristles and see if I can come back and soften the larger area. Again, I'm being careful not to get it into my shadow areas. Got a bristle here. These large sweeping motions kind of help you to soften. Alright, so that's enough on the background for now. I'm going to go back here and sort of revisit the colors and textures that I've got going on inside the pear. So I'm going to take my little small filbert here, and this time I'm going to start to add a little bit more of the yellowish brown tones. I'm going to start to maybe put a little bit of the brown texture in the pear and lighten up. So what I'll do first is get a little bit of a lighter, more intense reddish orange color and just barely glaze a little bit of it in here where it's going to be the lightest. Now I have to be careful with cad red light. If you add too much white, you're going to start to get a pink color. And so I'm going to adjust it right here. I'm going to get some of this yellowish brown color. And what I might try first is just glazing a little bit of straight raw sienna over the existing color. I'm going to add a little white up towards the top. I've got some highlights up here. So that's just raw sienna and white. And here it's fusing with the cad red light as I come down this side. So I'm going to put some of this lighter raw sienna. At this point it's got a little bit more cad red light in it, and I'm going to wrap it around here, fuse it into the lighter cad red light, and wrap it around into this lighter area here. It's probably a little bit too pink, but I'm going to lighten it up and I'll adjust the color later. One thing about glazing, you can establish your light areas and glaze over them after they're dry to kind of adjust and re-tint the color. So I've got some interesting things going on here. I also notice, and I don't know if you can see it in the film, there's also kind of a greenish, kind of a little bit of a green tint in the brown. So just because I'm seeing some sort of a green hue in there, hue is just another word for color, I'm going to mix a little bit of sap green into my raw umber and put a little bit of medium into it. And all I'm going to do is just kind of, wherever I see that, I'm going to glaze some of it in there. Now I'm going over my light here, so it's picking up some of those greenish tints. I'm seeing it down here a little bit. I'm going to wipe and pick up some of my highlight color here. While the two areas are wet, I can work in the highlight and I can work in some of the shadows. Remembering not to overwork the paint. I don't want to turn it to mud. I'm just kind of popping these little colors in here and here. also, I want to darken and intensify these colors, and I really liked the blue-green color that I was using on the previous layer, so I'm going to mix up a little bit more blue-green. And I'm going to go ahead and glaze over shadow. It's darker right up underneath here. And I can also work this right into this shadow area. If you'll notice, I'm on purpose, I'm messing up my edges. I really like to do that. It just kind of creates a more painterly look in my still life paintings. I'm seeing a little bit of dark go through here, so I'm bringing this color in. If I go back to my light color, I need to try to get the dark green shadow color out of the brush, and I'll come back and revisit this kind of goldish yellow color with the raw sienna and the cad red. Pull this right in here. That's really pretty intense right there. Kind of toning down that pink, like I said I would do earlier here. Picking up a little bit more white and touching it in right in here in this lighter area. All right, so I've got this green in here, and I'm starting to make mud. Green and red are complementary colors. They're on the opposite side of the color wheel, and when you mix opposites, complementary colors, they will dull each other. So I want to be careful not to overwork this area. So I'm going to let that dry. I really like what's going on here with the brush strokes. I'm going to switch over here to my small round brush and pick up some of these lighter gold colors and put some more detail right up in here. Using a little bit thicker paint. I'll probably have one more layer after this one. I've got two little bumps on the stem. Letting some of this green show up a little bit more. It's just more interesting. Got too much white coming down the side here, so I can lift it off. I can blend it in. I can adjust it later. Right now I'm just kind of thinning it out and letting it kind of spread around the surface. All right, I got a little bit crazy right here on the edge, so I will kind of lift a little bit of this paint off. Taking the squeegee tool and take a dry clean brush and just kind of soften. Whoops, that happens. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna leave this one alone for a little while. Let's see here. I'm gonna lighten up my turquoise. I'm just kind of feeling it right now to make this a little bit brighter, just because I can. You know, it's going to be your painting. You decide. Whoops. All right, now I'm going to play with the colors and textures on here, and I'm just going to go through the same process. I'm going to pick up all these little colors that I see and just kind of work them into the surface. So I'm going to start with this bright yellow that I see right up here. It's bright, but it's also dull. And maybe that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but. So I mixed raw sienna and cad yellow, and I'm putting some white in there. I'm going to see what happens here. That's a pretty nice color. I'm just going to dry brush. Now this is called dry brushing. I don't have any medium. There's no thinner. And so I'm just picking up a little bit of paint and I'm going to drag it across the surface. And it's picking up the texture of the canvas. I'm just kind of dragging that yellow in there where I see it. Now it kind of changes to more of a green color, so I'm just going to add some green. Ooh, that's a lot of green. Has a lot of yellow in it, so it's going to appear as more of the lime color. And again, it's really dull here, so I'm choosing to kind of intensify the color. Still dry brushing. All right, I've got some green in my brush, and now I know if I add it with its complement red, it's gonna dull, and I need some duller colors here between green and red. So I'm gonna give it a shot and see if my green and red, if I just add some of my cad red light in here, kind of see what happens. I kind of get a dull in between color. So maybe I can dry brush a little bit of this in here between the layers. Mess up my edge a little bit and give it a little glowing, kind of a glowing yellow edge. All right, I'm going to go back to my raw umber, picking up a little bit of red in there, and I'm going to hit the edge right back here. That's really going to get dull on me if I work it into those wet yellow and green. So I'm just going to kind of stay. There's a dark spot here. Just trying to mimic the shape of the things, the colors and values that I see. There's some duller colors right in here. Grab some of this red. I just have a little bit of thinner in my brush. I'm just kind of letting these edges kind of mold together. It's kind of like a marbling effect. All right, so I'm liking what's going on here. And real quick, Before I leave this painting session, I'm just going to grab a little bit of this turquoise just because I feel like it. And I kind of see a blue-green in there, so I'm just going to, real quick, just let it fall into the pear in a few places. I'm going to come in here and let it fall into this pear. Again, not brushing it very much because it'll turn muddy. So I'm just kind of letting it sit on top of what's underneath it. Fizzling out the edges. Picking up some more of this bright yellow. Just gonna pop it right in here in the back. And I lost the turquoise, so I'm gonna pick some of that up a little bit thicker. Just let it fall back in here, right, maybe right between the yellow and green. Wipe, kind of soften the edges. All right, I'm really liking this. So real quick, I know that I'm about to have to get up. My little boy's about to get out of bed. I can feel it. I know he's about to shout mommy from the bedroom. And so right before I stop, I'm just gonna take a little bit of blue-green, raw umber, a little more blue in the mix, and make my darker color, putting a lot more blue, very little green. And I'm gonna look at the stems and see where I see the darkest edges. I see a little divot right here where there's a detail. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint this in there. I'm gonna pull a little darker edge around this stem. This end is slightly darker here. You can also pop in that dark area. I'm gonna do some softening here in just a second. There's a little dark line right here. There's a little slanted edge here, and this curves. I need a little more medium to make it flow off the brush. I'm a little shaky. I've had too much coffee this morning. I love coffee. All right, so I'm just real quick looking in here. Here's a little divot on the side of this pear. I can bring that shape out here. I think later today I'll come back and I'll put some final touches on. And I think this painting will be complete. Real quick, soft dry brush. I just want to kind of soften the edges of these dark values. This is kind of a sharp edge here, so I've got a clean dry brush. Just going to soften the edge. Soften. If your whole painting is soft and you have one area that has sharp edges, it might not work out so well. All right, there we go. So later we're going to want to add some reflective light, put in the final touches, and there we go. So this was layer 3, and when you're doing a small painting, you can usually get done in about 3 or 4 layers. And so I will be back later today and we will finish this painting up.